Why did I just do that? Shenanigans. I just sprayed myself in the eye because I was pretending to perfume myself gracefully. Oh dear. Hi friend, it's me Nat, and today I decided to film this video eventually. I know you're all very excited for this video, and that is persuading your parents for a pet. I haven't specified this to any pet in particular because some people have asked me in terms of hamsters, other people have asked me in terms of guinea pigs. I've also had cats, and I've also had things like rabbits. So I don't want to specify to any particular pet, but I may add in some experience and things because obviously I've had experience with guinea pigs, hamsters, cats. So I may add my experience in those sections, but otherwise this is open for all sorts of animals, including large animals like horses, cats, dogs. I think it is pretty basic. I'll try and make it a bit more personal and a bit more useful than the usual, you know, look after your current pets and clean your house and pay for it yourself. I'll try and make it a bit more broad than that and a bit more interesting. So anyway, let's just jump straight into it. So you really want a pet. You've decided that you want this pet, but you do have to think about a few things first. I think these are the most important before even going to ask your parents, because a lot of parents will just say no straight away, and that might be because they have these reasons inside their head and they know it's not practical. So you need to be prepared if they do question you about these, or if they do say no because of these, you need to be able to fight back and say no, but blah 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 blah. So I'm just going to go through a few things that I know my parents think are very important. Will make them say no straight away before they've even got a chance to fight my case. And these are the following things. The first one is definitely if we can afford it. I mean, a lot of people are not made of money. I mean, no one's made of money, but not everyone's extremely loaded and can take any pet they like. My parents will straight away go for cost and say, but can we afford it? Will you be able to spay or neuter it? Will you be able to vaccinate it if you need to? Will you be able to get more if it needs more than one and then pay for all of them? Supplies, cages, it's a lot of money usually, pets. If you're going for something like a hamster, usually the expense is usually on when you first get it, and it's a big price at the beginning, and then it gets a bit cheaper as you go. So with a hamster it's kind of okay because you can kind of say to your parents, yes, you will spend quite a lot of money at the beginning, but then don't worry, the cost of upkeeping isn't that expensive because they don't live very long, so you won't have very big vet bills in terms of like terminal illnesses and stuff, because hamsters tend to get quite sick quite quickly and then just pass away. They don't tend to have prolonging illnesses which cost a lot of money, and they also eat very little and don't have that bigger cages. Like, they're not guinea pig sized cages filled with bedding. Even though they do need large cages, they're a lot cheaper than other animals. So if you've got something like a hamster, you can definitely argue that case. But if you do have cost and you think, I can't afford to vaccinate my rabbit, or I can't afford to spay it and I can't afford to keep two, then you've kind of answered the question yourself that you can't really have the rabbit or whatever pet you like because you can't actually afford it. So there's no point even asking your parents because that'll probably be in their head too. So you must be prepared for them to ask you, you know, can we afford it? You have to think through logically. Things like vet bills and emergencies will definitely need to be thought of as well. You might think, oh, it's fine, I can afford it, but would you be able to afford it if a really big vet bill came? That's the question. You also need to say to yourself, like, will I be going to university? Because a lot of parents will say no because you're going to university. This, a lot of you will know, is my issue with the guinea pig. My mum doesn't want any more guinea pigs because she doesn't want me to go off to uni and leave them all behind because she does not want to care for them. Now, for me, the way I've dealt with this, because obviously Minstrel was unexpected, is just to say that I will rehome her if I have to go to uni. Obviously this wouldn't have been ideal. I wouldn't have got her if I knew that I would have to rehome her because I've decided to go to university. But that is what I've said to my mum, don't worry, I won't leave her with you, I will rehome her. Obviously she is 5 now, so the chances are, well, she could, but the chances are quite slim that she'll live until I go to uni because I still have another 2 years. So I'm alright on that front. But if you know you want a horse, let's say, and you're going to go to university and you couldn't afford to keep the horse or upkeep it alongside university and you wouldn't have the time and you might be going away from home so you won't be able to take it with you, then obviously the answer is going to be no straight away. So do think logically before you ask. Think, you know, money and university I think are two very key things, especially if you're a young child, because a lot of people watching are like my age or below and can't really afford to keep the pets themselves because they're too young to get a job, and also they're more likely to go to uni because the uni's coming up and everyone wants to go to uni and stuff. I don't know, but a lot of people do want to go to uni and a lot of people don't have jobs to pay for it, so those are the most two important things, I think. You've also got the issue of space. A lot of people don't have enough space in their house and their parents might just say no straight away because they don't want big cages. Unfortunately, there isn't much you can brush past this, apart from, you might have heard the pig there, apart from the fact that you could say to your parents that you will put the hamster cage under the slanted ceiling that no piece of furniture fits, and as you all know, Minstrel is under a slanted ceiling in my loft, and that's kind of my excuse for putting a ginormous cage. I'm looking over there because she's over there. But that's kind of my excuse for using a ginormous cage, because that slant wouldn't be able to fit any other piece of furniture. So I can just say, you know, it doesn't really make a difference if it's empty or whether it's got Minstrel in it. So that was my excuse, but a lot of parents will say about space. Obviously, if it's a rabbit or guinea pig, you always have the option of popping them outside. If it's a cat and you're trying to persuade them and they say we don't have enough space, cats don't need a lot of space. You don't need to worry about having a mansion for a cat. Cats prefer outdoors usually, unless you want to keep it an indoor cat, but then that's a completely other topic as to whether that's like okay and stuff, but yes. A lot of parents will also argue the thing about holiday, what we do when we go on holiday. It comes under kind of affording as well, because a lot of people go to pet sitters and that's expensive. So if you can't afford it, then there's no way around it unless you have a a family member who can look after the pet, because that's what I do with the cats, and then the guinea pig goes to someone. But obviously you need to be able to afford that. So if your parents do say what happens when we go on holiday, you can always say it's fine because I can afford the pet sitter, and then that's kind of that problem solved. If you can't, then kind of screwed a bit. But a lot of animals like hamsters or gerbils will actually be okay if they're just fed and checked on by someone, or they can be left with a small stash of food for a few days. I wouldn't leave it long because that's your own risk, but I know my hamsters, I had left them for 1 or 2 or 3 days with a bowl full of food and a water bottle, and they were fine. Obviously it's not ideal, and if something was to happen then it would be your fault, but I know my hamsters were okay for a night or 2 because they're very low maintenance animals. If that is your parents' arguments, you can always say that they're fine to be left alone for a few days, and if not, you can just get your friend to come around and feed them, so that's not really an issue, as a lot of parents tend to pin that as the reason as to why they can't get a pet. Well, my parents certainly do. They go, oh, what happens when you're on holiday? But if you have a good fight back to that, then you should be fine. So I'm just going to split the rest in sections because I feel like you need to prove to your parents that you want this pet. You may have got through all those firing line of questions, which is what I call them when they ask you all those key questions, and if you can't really answer them, there's no chance of getting the pet. But now they're still saying no, and you need to prove to them that you really want this pet. So I did this with the hamsters and it worked really well. I do have to admit, my parents were adamant about getting any other pet because we had cats, but I was fussed. I did love them more than anyone else in my family, but I don't think I showed it quite enough, and that kind of made my mum a bit reluctant when getting hamsters. And I think she thought it was going to be like my latest toy where I got it and then thought, you know what, don't really want this anymore. And I think that's what my mum was fearful of, which is why she's so hard to persuade, because she just doesn't want to be stuck with the animal when she's not an animal lover herself. So I had to show her that I really was prepared for a hamster, and this is how I did it. My first thing was just researching. It sounds pretty basic, but I would literally sit on my laptop downstairs researching about hamsters for days and months and over a year, and I was still researching, and every day I'd come home from school, I sat on my little Dell laptop downstairs right where she could see me, and I just looked on all these hamster forums. And I guess it really helped me because she kept getting really annoyed and being like, enough, you're not getting one, sort of thing. But deep down she knew how much I really wanted one, and she realised that I was learning everything I needed to know so that I was prepared for the pet. Bit of a cheesy one, but I did actually impress them with facts all the time and be like, hey, did you know a hamster's nocturnal, which means when I'm bored at night, as opposed to being on my laptop, I'll be playing with the hamster. It worked. It sounds cheesy, it's kind of predictable, but it definitely worked for me. I also think it's really good to be keen to learn and not be like a know-it-all. So if you're a bit stuck in your ways, like you know everything, always be keen to learn more and know more and impress your parents. I think it's all about expanding your knowledge. knowledge. It's all about expanding your knowledge so that they do know that you really are taking it all seriously. I have a little do's and don'ts list. I'm just going to read out the don'ts because I think I've made this video really long. So I'm just going to read out a few of them and then I'll finish the video there. Don'ts is definitely crying. Puts my parents off a million miles. They would run off. Like, no, they hate crying. Emotional blackmail. This doesn't work for my parents either. It comes under crying, but being like, oh, you know, I hate you. You're awful, you won't let me get me a guinea pig. That puts my parents right off. I'm sure it does for most people's parents, but definitely mine. I haven't done it because I learned that when I was like 8, but I hope none of you are doing that if you really want one and you're doing that. Someone also said to me the other day that you should ignore your parents if they're not letting you get something. That doesn't work for me, 100% doesn't work for me. My parents would be like, grow up, you're definitely not getting one if you can't even act like a 16-year-old. So yeah, I wouldn't ignore your parents or be rude to your parents or cry to your parents because, you know, they are your parents after all. They will make the decisions, so you've got to be half decent to them at least. Comparing yourself to other people doesn't work for my parents. If I was to say to my mum, oh, blah blah blah, I've got 3 guinea pigs, my mum would be like, good for them, but you're not getting one. She really hates it when I compare myself to other people. I might be like, oh, but they have 10 animals. She's like, no, you're not them, you know, that doesn't work for me. Might work for you, but for me it's a definite don't because she hates it when I compare to people. So don't sit there comparing to people if you think that won't go down in your parents' books, because it doesn't for mine, and mine are quite hard. Give up. I mean, this sounds a bit ridiculous, but I just think it's really important not to give up because people often give up when their parents say no, and that kind of shows that you're not really committed or that keen on getting the pet because you've just been like, yeah, you know what, they're right, and off you go. I mean, if it really meant a lot to you, you would keep going, and I can definitely talk from this. I mean, I have wanted a friend for Minstrel for over a year and I still haven't give up, and I'll still mention it to my parents, and yes, it's got a bit annoying to them, but I think it might be finally starting to go through. So I think it's most important never to give up. So thank you all so much for watching. I brought little Minstrel along just so that you could see her because I hadn't shown her in quite some time, as in one video, but you know, she wanted a little starring. So yes, thank you all so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. Should we give it a thumbs up? And I will see you all next time. Bye! Do we like my jumper? 1 minute. Oh, hey, Mr. Penguin. Who's ready for Christmas? Me! It's not even September yet and I'm waiting for Christmas. No shame, I tell you, no shame.